so let's just get this out of the way first. This wasn't supposed to be that popular, okay? I was expecting like maybe 3,000 views max, but I just wanted to share my little theory. I didn't mean for it to get this out of hand. And now I've promised y'all that I made a follow-up video and, okay, so I made a video talking about how Natlan's geography correlates to that of real-life places and countries. It was just a theory that I had for a very long time, and I just wanted to make a quick video on it. And one thing led to another. Basically, I misled my audience into thinking that my video was a cultural analysis of Natlan. And I would like to sincerely apologize for that. I didn't mean for that to be the case at all, but that isn't the point of this video. Basically, people who are more knowledgeable than me were kind enough to point out the things that I missed/didn't include in the video, along with their own theories as well. I say theories simply because the devs hadn't confirmed any of them. Most were good and few were blatantly wrong, thankfully. So in this video, I would like to shine a spotlight on some of these theories and of course elaborate on them as well. But of course, a disclaimer as always, I am not an expert in any of these topics I'm about to discuss, and I in fact am an amateur researcher who, although has done a fair share of my own research on these topics, it's still not the same as the real deal, and your input will be greatly appreciated if you have anything at all to add in case I get something wrong. I'm going to start with the theory that I personally am most interested about. The Masters of the Nightwind tribe is primarily inspired by North American and Central American cultures, but since their tribe's music uses Indonesian instruments, I had some suspicions that the tribe may be inspired by Indonesia as well. The reason I am most interested in this theory is because for the longest time I've always wanted some sort of Southeast Asian representation in Genshin, and I legit thought the Sumeru was the closest we were going to get, but that might not have been true after all. Let's look at this first comment. There are two things that stuck out to me in particular. Firstly, the woven scrolls. The Masters of the Nightwind tribe is famous in Natlan for their shamanism and, more interestingly, their methods of recording Natlan's history through woven scrolls. This commenter talked about something called batik, or batik, which is a traditional Indonesian textile made using wax-resistant techniques to create beautiful and intricate patterns, and they suggested that this may be a possible connection to Indonesian culture. In fact, many commenters suggested the same things. Unfortunately, however, you may already notice that these pictures don't exactly look like the woven scrolls at all. The patterns are different, their uses are different, and most importantly, they don't exactly hold the same amount of symbolic significance as the woven scrolls do. Okay, then what are the woven scrolls supposed to be anyways? Well, they are most similar to the traditional textiles of the Native American tribes. There are many types of textile weaving, each unique to their respective tribes, but the one I'm going to be using as an example is the Navajo weaving, purely because it is the one with the most information available. As you can see from my examples here, they look a lot more similar to the woven scrolls with their geometric shape and, more importantly, symbolisms in their motifs. For example, this design, which represents the tribe's homeland. As you can see here, there are 4 triangles representing their 4 sacred mountains, or prayer feathers in some cases. Another one is the Spider Woman motif. It is said that the Spider Woman was the one who taught the Navajo people how to even weave fabric in the first place, which is pretty cool. I want to give an honorable mention to the Amate paper art. Amate is a bark paper used by Mesoamerican civilizations to record their history and make art, much like the paper we use today. Although it's not a fabric, I still wanted to mention it. And there are also Mayan and Incan textiles which, although doesn't aesthetically match 100%, they still have symbolism in their motifs and patterns. In my opinion, the real inspiration is probably a mix of all the examples that I listed so far. The second thing that stuck out to me in this comment is that they theorized that the reason there is musical symbolism in the Masters of the Nightwind tribe related to Indonesia is due to the fact that Suriname has a large amount of Indonesians present in their country. For those who don't know, Suriname is a country in the north of South America, which, although this country isn't necessarily the main inspiration behind Natlan, I still wanted to mention it since it's still pretty close by. Now, the history is actually really interesting. You see, in the late 1800s, slavery was abolished in Suriname, meaning that the Dutch companies that utilized slavery are now scrounging around for new laborers. Since Netherlands had colonized Indonesia at the time, workers were brought from Indonesia into Suriname to replace the slaves that once worked there. Now, I don't exactly have any evidence to either confirm nor deny this theory, but at least it's interesting. And unfortunately, there isn't anything else I can find that particularly links the Masters of the Nightwind tribe to Indonesia, which is really sad, but there actually is something else that may link these two places together, and that is our next theory, which is that Natlan is actually inspired by the Pacific Ring of Fire, plus Western Africa. Now, this is a little bit of a strange theory, but it is one that kinda seems to work on paper. The Pacific Ring of Fire is a large array of active volcanoes that surrounds the Pacific Ocean, making an, well, almost ring of volcanoes, thus the name Ring of Fire. And for Natlan, the Nation of Fire, to be inspired by this Ring of Fire is incredibly fitting, since fire is literally in the name. Plus, Central America is a part of said Ring of Fire, and as we've discussed in our last video, Natlan is primarily inspired by Central America. The Pacific Ring of Fire ranges from South America all the way up to Alaska, cross over Oceania to Russia, straight down to Japan, then to the Philippines, Brunei, and Indonesia, pass through Papua New Guinea and a few islands, and then finally ending up in New Zealand. That's a whole lot of countries. And you're saying that all of that is Natlan? Okay, but that really is a lot of countries though. Let's break it down to see how much of those are at least culturally represented in Natlan. But first, let me just rant about something, okay? All of y'all people in the freaking internet keep saying that, oh, Natlan is inspired by this and that, and y'all don't say what specific aspect of it is inspired by said countries. Like, let me just tell you, it makes my life a whole lot more difficult with all you incredibly vague individuals. And seriously, you're starting to make me think that you're one of those conspiracy theorists who just echo the same stupid nonsense without doing their own research. Of course, I do know that our community is most definitely above that. Sorry about that, that was rather quite mean of me back there. Anyways, where were we? Yes. We'll start by looking at South America first. After a lot of research, I eventually stumbled upon this Instagram post by explorers.compass_ about their theory on the inspiration behind the Flower Feather clan. And oh my goodness, like, forget every single thing I said in my last video. This dude is the real deal, bro. I'll leave the link to their channel down in the description, so please go check them out. They are extremely underrated. I do recommend that you watch the video yourself, but the gist of it is that the Flower Feather clan is actually inspired by the indigenous people of Peru, who also have their own cowboy culture as well, and some other stuff, but yeah, just go watch the video. So that is Natlan's connection to that area of the map. And for Central and North America, it's really obvious with what I've said so far. Now comes the more questionable bit of the map. Of course, we all know that Natlan is definitely not inspired by Russia and not inspired by Japan, since both of those places already have their own representation in Genshin. But as for the Southeast Asian countries, we got the Philippines, Indonesia, and Brunei. Philippines is the most obvious one, and that's because the Bakunawa is a dragon that lives in the Mare Javari, which of course is in Natlan. The Bakunawa is a serpent, or a dragon, if you will, in Filipino mythology, and is a very culturally significant one at that. So the Mare Javari is most likely going to be inspired by the Philippines, which is indeed very exciting. But as for Indonesia and Brunei, yeah, I don't think so, because there aren't enough cultural ties in Natlan to conclusively say that it is inspired by these two countries. All we got is literally the music, and that's just it. And spoiler alert, even the other theories in this video don't help it at all. So the definitive answer is unfortunately no. There also aren't any significant ties to any of the other islands at all, except for New Zealand. since Malika, the literal pyro archon of the nation, is inspired by the Maori goddess of fire, Mahuika. So considering all this, we have yeah, it's more of a weirdly shaped pentagon. As it turns out, Natlan is only inspired by about half the countries in the Ring of Fire, which isn't a particularly nice ratio, considering that this theory needed the exception of including Western Africa to even be viable in the first place. So since Natlan is only inspired by half of the countries in the Pacific Ring of Fire, I'll say that this theory is half true. Next theory is that all of Natlan's inspirations in terms of countries can be inferred using the names of all of Natlan's NPCs. Ugh, okay, this is a doozy, everyone. Strap in, we're going on a wild ride with this one. Oh, where do I even begin? Okay, so in real life, when nations have contact with each other, either through trade or just simply being right next to each other, naturally they will exchange cultures and, of course, people. What I mean by this is that the quote-unquote traditional names of the people in each country are heavily influenced by what countries they were in contact with. Moreover, names can be created by using already existing names from other countries by combining them or slightly changing their names, thus making a name that quote-unquote originates from said country. I don't know too much about the names of people in other countries, but what I do know very well is the name of people in my own country, and I can guarantee you that if you look up names that originate in Thailand, you'll 100% stumble across a name that either comes from Bali or Sanskrit, which are both languages that don't originate from Thailand. Of course, this is all dependent on how reliable their sources were, they as in the devs of course, since the devs have never revealed to us how they get the names for their NPCs, and let's be honest, why would they? This means that names from other countries in which the devs had not considered for the creation of Natlan can slip into their list. So using this method for identifying what specific, keyword specific, countries Natlan is based off is entirely unrealistic. And so in the context of my last video, where I wanted the specific countries that Natlan is based off, plus these countries have to be considered the main inspirations, it was never going to work. Consider also that in my last video I assigned the countries by tribe, which makes this theory work even less than it already did, due to the naming conventions of Natlanese people. I'm pretty sure the way that the devs chose a name for their NPCs is through having a large pool of names from the general cultures that they were looking into when creating Natlan. Whenever they wanted to name an NPC, they just pick a name from said list without considering which countries the tribe of that NPC is based off on. How do I know this? Well, let me give you an example. This kid right here in the Collective of Plenty tribe is named Dutse. His name originates from this city in Nigeria. Now, the Collective of Plenty tribe is incredibly Mexican, and I don't know if you could tell, but Mexico is incredibly far away from Nigeria, just saying. And this kid isn't the only one experiencing this. There are literally so freaking many NPCs in Natlan that suffers from this same issue. Since I'm assigning a tribe to specific countries, I'm pretty sure you could tell by now that this will hinder my efforts more than help it. But credit where credit is due though. What this theory is actually useful for is getting the general idea of what sort of general culture, for lack of a better term, Natlan is based off on. By looking at all of the NPC names in Natlan, their names can be simplified into 5 main categories. 1 is Sub-Saharan African, 2 is Central American, 3 is Andean, which is where the Incan Empire is in the Andes Mountains, 4 is Polynesian, this triangle in the Pacific Ocean, and of course, others, as in those NPCs come from other regions, plus fantasy names like Tepetlosaurs and stuff. And I would like you to also notice that there aren't any Southeast Asian names here, and I think those will all be in the Mir Javari, if any. So although this theory wasn't useful for my last video, I would be lying if I said that this didn't at least help somewhat for this video. This will be the end of the video. I would like to clarify that even though some of the comments in this video were quote-unquote wrong, I really mean no hate against them, and the reason I chose to showcase these comments was of course not to publicly shame them or anything, but I genuinely thought it was interesting and wanted to do more research on them. If I perhaps missed anything, your input would be greatly appreciated. Oh, and also special thanks to Explorer's Compass on Instagram and YouTube, super underrated channel. I will leave a link to his channel down in the description as well as the videos in which I got some of the information. I highly recommend his channel, and I guess I will see you all, eventually. Bye! So, I don't have a bloopers this time, so here's me having beef with the dogs in my neighborhood. Enjoy. And what makes this even funnier is that throughout the entire recording, you can barely hear the dogs. So yeah. Not the dogs, man. What the dog doing? Seriously, bro? I just want to record my lines, and now the dogs are all barking outside. Yeah, would you guys just shut up, please? Oh, that did work. Or not. Okay, that actually did not work. Oh, gosh dang it. Every time I thought they were actually going to shut up, they don't. Okay, there we go. See, it happens every single time. Why don't the dogs... Literally, every time I speak, the dogs bark. It's like they're responding to me or something. I don't know. Yeah, like literally every time I speak, they bark. But every time I stop speaking, they don't. Which tricks me into thinking that they're gonna stop. But then when I speak again, thinking that they have already stopped, they just keep barking. Why? Why? That's so mean.